The Jolly Postman by Janet and Allan Ahlberg.
Letters, letters, lots of letters, neatly folded, slipped in 2 envelopes you lick and stick, and then you stick the stamps on too. When you post them at the postbox, down into the dark they slide, to be sorted, piled and sorted, sent in sackfuls far and wide. Letters, letters, lots of letters, popped by postmen through the door. Just like snowflakes, full of magic, there they lie upon the floor.
Once upon a bicycle, so they say, a jolly postman came one day from over the hills and far away with a letter for, guess who? The 3 bears. Baby Bear saw him first. He was sitting up at the table with his bib on, waiting for his porridge, and playing with his toy trucks.
Hello?
He squealed, waving his chubby paw through the window at the jolly postman.
I haven't had my breakfast yet. Daddy Bear burnt it.
Good morning, 3 bears, beamed the jolly postman, popping his head round the door. I've got a letter for you this morning. He was too polite to mention the smell of burnt porridge.
It's for me,
said Baby Bear, pretending to read the envelope, upside down.
No, it's not,
smiled Mummy Bear, taking the letter.
It says Mr. and Mrs. Bear.
Grunted Daddy Bear, peering over her shoulder. He was in a bit of a bad mood because of the porridge.
Whoever sent it can't do straight lines. The writing's all wobbly. Even the stamp stuck on crooked.
It was posted in Banbury Cross,
said Mummy Bear, pointing at the postmark.
Now, who lives in Banbury Cross, I wonder?
I know!
Cried Baby Bear, banging his spoon on the table.
Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see a fine lady up on a white horse, with rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. She shall have music wherever she goes.
I once delivered a letter to the fine lady of Banbury Cross, said the jolly postman. It was from her cousin, the Queen, and the envelope was rose pink and smelled of perfume. But this letter wasn't from the Queen. It wasn't from the fine lady either. It was from Goldilocks, who also lived in Banbury Cross, and it was full of spelling mistakes.
Read it!
Cried Baby Bear, jumping up and down in his chair.
Please?
Watch that chair, Baby Bear!
Roared Daddy Bear.
That chair's never been the same since Goldilocks sat on it.
Mummy Bear gave a little cough and started to read the letter.
Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bear and Baby Bear.
It is for me!
Squealed Baby Bear in delight.
I am very sorry indeed that I came into your house and ate Baby Bear's porridge. Mummy says I am a bad girl. I hardly eat any porridge when she cooks it, she says. Daddy says he will mend the little chair.
Snorted Daddy Bear.
He'd better make a good job of it then.
Love from Goldilocks,
continued Mummy Bear.
P.S. Baby Bear can come to my party if he likes. There will be 3 kinds of jelly and a conjurer. What's a conjurer?
Asked Mummy Bear, mystified.
A conjurer, growled Daddy Bear. She spelt it wrongly. Don't they teach children anything at school these days?
I'm going to a party!
Shouted Baby Bear. Baby Bear had never been to a party before.
Well now, isn't it exciting?
Said Mummy Bear.
You can wear your new red and white striped T-shirt.
And off she bustled to look for it. But it wasn't in any of Baby Bear's drawers. And it wasn't under his bed either. Mummy Bear flung open the cottage door and stared at the washing line. Empty. I know where it is, chuckled the Jolly Postman over his mug of tea. "Lift up your bib, Baby Bear." And there it was, on Baby Bear. Then Mummy Bear stuck Goldilocks' letter on the front of the fridge, because it was a nice letter in spite of the spelling mistakes, with coloured-in drawings of the 3 bears' cottage, Goldilocks herself, and the 3 jellies they were going to have at the party.
Green jelly.
Said Baby Bear, wrinkling up his nose.
Horrid.
When the Jolly Postman had finished his tea, he said goodbye to the 3 bears and set off to deliver the rest of the post. "Oh, no," he groaned when he saw the next letter in his pile. "Not her. What's somebody written to her for?" And he decided to give his bicycle a quick check over. The part of the woods where the 3 bears lived was full of sunny glades and friendly squirrels. In the part where she lived, the trees grew dense and dark, and you never knew who might be hiding behind the next bush. The Jolly Postman didn't fancy breaking down in that part of the woods, thank you very much. After a long, wobbly ride into the deepest depths of the wood, he came to the prettiest little cottage you've ever seen. But don't let that fool you. No fairy godmother or kindly Snow White lived in this cottage, oh no, because this cottage was made of gingerbread and marzipan and chocolate drops and peppermint, and in the garage stood a little black car with a very special number plate indeed. HAG1. Hag 1. "She is a right old hag as well," murmured the Jolly Postman to himself, pushing his bicycle up the path. For in this cottage, which she'd now decided to call Gingerbread Bungalow, because she thought it sounded posher, lived the Wicked Witch. The very same Wicked Witch who, not so long ago, had nearly had a little boy called Hansel for her Sunday dinner, with Yorkshire pudding and ketchup.
Fancy some toast and jam?
She asked the Jolly Postman as he looked for her letter in his sack. The Wicked Witch didn't get many visitors, and whenever she did, she either offered them toast and jam or had them for dinner. "No, thank you," said the Jolly Postman, looking at the jam jar. "Horrid jam," it said on it.
Well, you can have some tea then,
declared the witch, pouring him a cup of terrible green tea.
Help yourself to sugar.
So the Jolly Postman read the newspaper and pretended to drink his terrible tea, whilst the Wicked Witch finished her breakfast and looked at her letter. On the envelope it said, "Open now, don't delay. This could be your lucky day."
Goody,
said the Wicked Witch. Inside was a notice from Hobgoblin Supplies, advertising all the things that witches like to buy, things like deadly lampshades, Halloween boots, broomsticks, goggles, non-stick cauldrons. Best of all, there was a free witch watch with every order.
come and look at this, Sparkle,
cried the witch.
A cup and saucer tea service that washes itself up.
Sparkle was the Wicked Witch's black cat. He wore a little white apron and kept Gingerbread Bungalow as clean and shiny as a new pin. He didn't look a bit like a witch's cat, because he was so soft and round and furry. At night he slept on the old witch's feet. He was better than a hot water bottle because he was still warm in the morning. The Wicked Witch had one other pet, who at that very moment was dangling just above the Jolly Postman's head, wondering whether to give him a horrible fright or not.
Little boy pie mix,
read the witch.
What a good idea. Much easier than catching your own. They're wriggly things, our little boys. Wriggly, squiggly, squirmy things. Little girls are easier. Or at least they used to be. But they rot your teeth. Look at Dracula. He's hardly got a fang left in his head.
Why? Asked the Jolly Postman. What are little girls made of?
What are little girls made of?
cried the witch.
Sugar and spice and all things nice. That's what little girls are made of.
What are little boys made of, then? asked the Jolly Postman.
What are little boys made of?
The witch went on.
Frogs and snails and puppy dogs' tails. That's what little boys are made of. Jolly Postman as well, I dare say.
Well, I think it's about time I was off, said the Jolly Postman.
No, it isn't,
said the Wicked Witch.
You haven't drunk your tea yet.
Dearie me, so I haven't, sighed the Jolly Postman. Green tea isn't everybody's cup of tea, you know. But just then the Wicked Witch's other pet made up her mind.
Whee!
She went, dropping down in front of the Jolly Postman's nose and landing on his knee. And because the Wicked Witch's other pet happened to be a creepy, crawly, hairy, scary, fat and furry spider called Splat, the Jolly Postman leapt to his feet, knocked over the terrible green tea, and pedalled off down the path as fast as he could.
Bye-bye, Jolly Postman.
Cackled the Wicked Witch.
Come along, Sparkle. Come along, Splat. Wave bye-bye to the nice postman.
The Jolly Postman didn't stop pedalling until he reached the very edge of the wood. Then he got his letters out to see where he was going next. The letter on the top of the pile was a very interesting one indeed. It was in one of those special airmail envelopes with a red and blue pattern all round the edge, and there was a brightly coloured foreign stamp on it, with a palm tree and a friendly-looking sea monster. Mr. V. Big, said the Jolly Postman, reading the address. Never heard of him. Mile High House, Beanstalk Gardens? Never heard of Mile High House. But I know where Beanstalk Gardens are. That's where Jack and his mother live. Perhaps they can help. But Jack and his mother weren't there. Instead, there was a notice pinned to the front door of their cottage. Gone on holes. Key with Mr. Big. First house on left at top of Beanstalk. P.S. He's feeding the cat. It must have a very nice view, this mile-high house, puffed the Jolly Postman when he was about halfway up the beanstalk. Then a cloud came drifting by and he couldn't see a thing. Well, sometimes. By the time he got to the top, he'd had quite enough climbing for one day, but he wasn't finished yet, because Mile High House was such a giant-sized house that he had to climb up a ladder just to reach the doorbell. And when the giant-sized door creaked open, there stood a pair of giant-sized boots with a giant-sized giant wearing them. Mr. Big? asked the Jolly Postman in a very small voice. Mr. V. Big?
Of course I am,
said the giant grumpily.
Mr. Very Big indeed.
Not only did the giant look very grumpy, he also looked tired out. And there was a big bouncing baby Big tucked under his arm, who didn't look grumpy or tired out at all. She said, throwing her rattle at the Jolly Postman. It was a good job she missed, because the Jolly Postman would have ended up as flat as a pancake. The giant cheered up a bit when he saw that someone had sent him a letter. He poured the Jolly Postman a thimbleful of tea. The Jolly Postman could have had a bath in one of his teacups, gave him one of the bouncing baby's toy bricks to sit on, and opened the letter. It wasn't a letter. It was a postcard from Jack. He'd gone off on a magic carpet tour, and if all the little pictures of funfairs, food, cats with fiddles and mermaids on beaches were anything to go by, he was having a fine time.
Dear Giant Big,
read the giant. He'd had to put his spectacles on because the writing was so small.
Having a nice time? Me, my mum, and your hen what lays the golden eggs. So he's taken Henrietta with him, has he?
Jack's mother's called Gladys, not Henrietta, said the Jolly Postman.
I mean my hen, Henrietta!
Roared the giant, nearly blowing the Jolly Postman off his brick.
If I had some of these golden eggs now, I could afford to go on a magic carpet tour too. Never mind that lazy, good-for-nothing Jack.
The Jolly Postman looked at the big bouncing baby. She was eating a biscuit. Ever tried a lullaby? He said, trying to be helpful.
I don't know any,
growled the giant. So the Jolly Postman cleared his throat and began to sing. Hush-a-bye, baby, on a treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down will come baby, cradle and all. The big bouncing baby gurgled with delight and threw the rest of her biscuit at him. As the Jolly Postman climbed back down the beanstalk, wiping biscuit out of his eye, he only hoped that the giant would never ever try rocking the big bouncing baby to sleep in a cradle. If it ever came down, bouncing baby and all, Jack's cottage wouldn't stand a chance.
Letters, letters, lots of letters. Some for me and some for you. Birthday cards and invitations, valentines and gas bills too. Notes to say it's time to go and see the dentist. Oh, what fun. Postcards from your next-door neighbours, eating ice creams in the sun. Letters, letters, lots of letters. Who knows what surprise they hold? Some day when you get a letter, something magic will unfold.
Oh, my goodness me, breathed the Jolly Postman, his heart beating with excitement. Oh, my goodness gracious me! All morning he'd been carrying around in his sack a letter for Her Royal Highness Princess Cinderella, and he hadn't even known it was there. Suddenly it didn't matter at all that it had started to rain, and that he'd had to put his mackintosh on. He gave his badge a quick polish with his handkerchief, and then his boots, and set off for the palace. All the flags were flying, and there was a removal van outside because the Prince and Princess had just got back from their honeymoon. And inside, the palace was full of suitcases and half-unwrapped wedding presents. Princess Cinderella was even prettier than her pictures, and the Jolly Postman was so overcome that he nearly curtsied. But Prince Charming kindly offered him a glass of champagne and patted him on the back to make him feel at home.
Oh!
cried Princess Cinderella, opening her letter.
Just look at this! The Peter Piper Press have just published a delightful little storybook all about me. Oh, and you as well, of course, my dear. Shall I read it to you? Do stay and listen, Mr. Postman.
So the Jolly Postman sat down on the royal sofa beside His Royal Highness Prince Charming, drinking his champagne and thinking that this was the most wonderful day of his life, whilst in a voice as sweet as a nightingale's, the princess began to read.
Cinderella, the story of a fairy-tale princess. There was once a young woman named Cinderella, who had a cruel stepmother, 2 cruel and ugly stepsisters, and a father who was not around much. One day, the postman arrived with an invitation to the royal ball. The stepmother and the sisters got dressed in their finery and departed almost at once, leaving Cinderella alone. She couldn't go to the ball. She had nothing to wear and no transport. Luckily, at that moment, Cinderella's godmother dropped in. Finding Cinderella in tears, she worked her magic and sent her off to the ball in a beautiful gown and a golden coach. "But be back by 12, she said. "The magic stops at midnight." So Cinderella went to the ball and had a marvellous time. She ate lots of little sausages on sticks and danced constantly with the prince, who obviously admired her. Then, just when things were going well, the clock struck 12, and Cinderella had to run for it. The prince was inconsolable, until, that is, he found one of Cinderella's glass slippers, which cheered him up. The next day, he went looking for a young woman whose foot would fit the slipper, meaning to marry her if she'd have him. All the women in the town, young and old, and even the ugly sisters, tried on the slipper, but without success. Then, finally, Cinderella tried it on, and it fitted, of course. And that was that. A few days later, Cinderella and the prince were married. Telegrams of congratulations arrived from every corner of the kingdom, and the newspapers were full of the event. "Fairy tale princess," the headlines proclaimed, which, on this occasion, it must be said, was really no exaggeration at all. The end.
Princess Cinderella was so delighted with her story that she gave not only Prince Charming a big kiss, but also the Jolly Postman, who wobbled away on his bicycle full of champagne and happiness. The happiness didn't last long. "Oh, no," sighed the suddenly not-so-jolly postman, looking at his next letter. It was a very official and important-looking letter, and it was addressed to someone almost as bad as the Wicked Witch, B.B. Wolfe, Esquire, of Grandma's Cottage, Horner's Corner. B.B. Wolfe, Esquire, had once chased the Jolly Postman down the road and gobbled up one of his parcels, string and all, and that was because there was a pie and a dozen jam tarts in it. The Queen of Hearts had sent it to little Jack Horner for Christmas. The big bad wolf, because that's what the B.B. stood for if you hadn't already guessed, was sitting in Grandma's comfy rocking chair, in Grandma's pretty garden, wearing Grandma's best dress. He was trying to do Grandma's knitting, and when he saw the Jolly Postman coming up the path, he pretended even harder to be like Grandma.
"Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?"
sang the big bad wolf in a voice that didn't sound a bit like Grandma's. His teeth didn't look much like Grandma's either.
"With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row, tra-la, and pretty maids all in a row. Now, what row am I supposed to be on?" "Oh, chicken's legs. Now I've gone and dropped a stitch again. Oh, hello, Jolly Postman. Fancy seeing you here. What a surprise."
The big bad wolf was making an awful mess of Grandma's knitting. Then, because he was pretending to be Grandma, he asked the Jolly Postman if he wanted a cup of tea.
"Polly, put the kettle on. Polly, put the kettle on. Polly, put the kettle on. We'll all have tea,"
sang the big bad wolf in a voice that didn't sound a bit like Grandma's. He was getting fed up of pretending to be Grandma anyway.
"Suki, take it off again. Suki, take it off again. I'm not really Grandma. I'm just Big Bad Me."
"I know you are," said the Jolly Postman, handing him the very official and important-looking letter.
"Oh, crikey,"
said the big bad wolf. The letter was from Little Red Riding Hood's solicitors, Meeny, Miny, Mo and Co., warning the big bad wolf that if he didn't leave Grandma and Grandma's cottage alone, they'd send in the woodcutter, Sharpish, not to mention all the king's horses and all the king's men.
"It's that Little Red Riding Hood with her basket of goodies again,"
seethed the big bad wolf.
"She's a proper pain, she is. Always poking her nose in and getting me into hot water."
And the letter went on, while he was at it,
Would the big bad wolf kindly fork out for the repairs to the 3 little pigs' houses, the ones he damaged with all his huffing and puffing the other day? That was the last straw.
Not likely,
said the big bad wolf. And he was off over the garden wall in a trice, leaving Grandma's best dress in a heap on the doorstep. The Jolly Postman found Grandma tied up in the tool shed.
Just look at my knitting,
she wailed. Never mind, Grandma, said the Jolly Postman, pouring her a cup of tea. You'll soon pick all the stitches up, and then you'll have a lovely new bedsock for winter.
Bedsock?
Screeched Grandma.
This is supposed to be a woolly jumper, not a bedsock.
Leaving Grandma to sort out her knitting, the Jolly Postman looked in his sack. Just 2 more letters left to deliver that day. This is nice, he smiled to himself, looking at the name on the first one. Now, if I tell you that the address on it was 24 Blackbird Road, Banbury Cross, that when he got there the Jolly Postman saw Baby Bear at the gate with a bun in his paw, and that the letter looked very much like a birthday card, can you guess who it was for? Yes, Goldilocks. There she stood at the door, with a ribbon in her hair and her cheeks pink with excitement. Happy birthday, Goldilocks, said the Jolly Postman, handing her the letter. And it was a birthday card, with £1 to spend, from Mrs. Bunting and Baby Bunting. The verse inside the card went like this. Pat a cake, baker's man. Bake me a cake as fast as you can. Carry it in on a beautiful plate and light up the candles. Today I am 8. And Goldilocks' mother did carry in a cake on a beautiful plate, and the cake did have 8 candles on it. Everybody sat round the table to have a piece, including the Jolly Postman. All Goldilocks' friends were there too. There was Mary Mary and her little lamb, Tom Tom the piper's son with his pet pig, Jack and Jill, Humpty Dumpty, and of course Baby Bear. Humpty Dumpty ate lots of everything, except egg sandwiches, and Baby Bear decided green jelly was delicious, much nicer than porridge. The Jolly Postman stayed for the rest of the party too, because he only had 1 more letter to deliver. They played Postman's Knock, especially for him, Pass the Parcel, especially for him, Musical Bumps, especially for Humpty Dumpty, and Musical Chairs, especially for Goldilocks, who didn't break any this time. Then they played Who Can Burst the Biggest Number of Balloons, especially for Baby Bear. Baby Bear loved bursting balloons. It wasn't until the cow was jumping over the moon that the Jolly Postman waved goodbye to everyone, turned on his little bicycle lamp, and pedalled safely home in the darkness. It was very nearly bedtime. But first he made a cup of tea in his very own teapot. It was the best cup of tea he'd had all day. But hadn't he forgotten to deliver the last letter? No, because the last letter was for him.
Postman, postman, jolly postman, when at last back home you come, oh, how nice to get a letter, one that ends with love from Mum.